Now, before I start on today's sermon, let me just recap what we've been talking about. God's vision is to bring us home, to bring us into a relationship with Him, and to make us new, to grow us into the person He's envisioned us to be. So living with God to living for God. Now, that entire process is called spiritual growth. Now, we know spiritual growth is not automatic. That's a myth. It's really important that we understand that. In fact, we need to understand it has two ingredients. The first is that it's intentional. Spiritual growth is intentional. At RH3C, we call that the IDP, the intentional discipleship process. We hope to help people grow in 5 particular areas, 5 purposes, based on the 2 great statements in the Bible, the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. This is what Jesus calls His church, wants His church to be and to do. We want people to worship, that's learning to love God. We want people to be in fellowship, learning to love others. We believe in discipleship, growing maturity. We believe in ministry, giving something back, using your resources and your gifts and your energy to bless other people. And we believe the church should be on mission to bring and to share the love of Christ and the hope of Christ to a broken world. So it needs intentionality. The second ingredient of spiritual growth is relationships. God gives us a church family where we can grow. Now, what makes a family? I talked about that. First of all, common experience. The common experience of the grace of God is the foundation of this church. That we've all experienced this grace together. That is a life-changing, life-altering experience. A deeply powerful experience that shapes who we are fundamentally, and that binds us together. We talked about common values. This grace of God experienced in a certain way, a particular way, in this unique context, what we call Richmond Hill Christian Community Church. Lastly, and here's what I want to talk about today, mission. Today, I want to talk about how God expects our church family to bring His love and His hope to others that are around us. From me to He, as we grow in that, we get a we out of that. What has God called us to do together? Now, in 2021, we're going to focus on a few renewals. We're going to focus on, number 1, personal renewal. That's committing to growing. We want you to take little steps to grow. Number 2, we're going to focus on relational renewal. Commit to growing with others. It takes a family to grow. Number 3, commit to growing with others on mission. That's called missional renewal. And I want to talk about and zone in on that today. Because at the end, when you have personal renewal and relational and missional, you get a 4th renewal. And it goes in that order. Starts with yourself first, then with others, then the whole church is galvanized towards a mission. And what happens is this, cultural renewal. The place you reside in is transformed. That's the outcome. Now, in the 1800s, in the UK, there was a church called the Metropolitan Tabernacle. It built a pastor's college. It built an orphanage, a literacy center. The city transformational work in that church was incredible. You know who the pastor was? The pastor was Charles Spurgeon, the Prince of Preachers, this great preacher. He was known for his preaching, his expository preaching, but his church was known to be the city transformational agent. Now, this is important because when you balance the 5 purposes, when a church does what it does, the city is transformed. That's really important to understand. Now, if you look at Acts chapter 2, the very first church, right after Jesus ascended, and he gives the Great Commission to the disciples, there's this church. And it's an incredible church. Now, I'll let you read the passage yourself. It's called the Fellowship of Believers. It talks about how this church devoted themselves to teaching and fellowship and breaking bread and to prayer and to worship, right? And it's this incredible vision of a church. But look what it says at the very end in verse 47. It says, they enjoyed the favor of all people, and the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Now, it doesn't say that everybody in the city was saved, but it does say that the whole city was blessed by the church. I want to give you 4 ways today how a church can engage the city. Now, they're found in John 17. Jesus' final prayer, his final words. And so he's saying, church, pay attention. Disciples, you need to pay attention because this is really important. He says, the first is this. The church can be against the city. It can be in the city. Now, there's a little bit of a difference. You can be against something, but you can also be apathetic towards something. So these are people that believe in the gospel, they love their church, but that's where their faith stays. They want to be insular. They want to be isolated away from the city. They avoid interruptions, disruptions, and corruptions. And this type of church ends up with a gospel of moralism, where the bad people should stay out and the good people can stay in. And if you're not careful, a church can easily become this way, inward-focused type of group of people. And Jesus says that's dangerous, right? Jesus says that's dangerous for the church. He doesn't want the church to be that. The second way is being a church of the city. This is assimilation. This is when there's a group of believers that love the city, but they forget who they are. They lose their Christian distinctiveness and identity. They embrace all the values of the city. And Christians can do this. They can be so concerned about being culturally relevant, they forget who they are. Now, Jesus would say they've lost their salt and their light. They've lost the flavor that they should bring to the world and the hope that they should bring to the world. And you end up not with a gospel of moralism, but with a gospel of relativism. As long as people feel good about themselves, that is all that matters. And churches that do that, what they do is they end up catering to every preference. They avoid difficult conversations, especially conversations about sin. So they love talking about God's love, but they don't want to talk about sin. And they can really be, and what I've noticed is they can really be about polish and presentation more than gospel truth, application, and living. And Jesus says, look in verse 16, he says, they are not of the world, even as I am not of it. Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is the truth. So he says, look, you should be in the world, but you're not of the world. Your identity does not rest in the world. Christians can do this as well. Churches can do this. It's like carbon dioxide. It's odorless, it's tasteless, you can't see it, but once it seeps itself into the church, you're in trouble. It's going to poison the church. You could be a church of the city. Thirdly, this is not a group of people, but this is what we call the Lone Ranger. Look at verse 18. It says, as you sent me into the world, I have sent them into the world. Some people read that as an individual command, but it's actually a communal command for the church. See, some of us are so frustrated with church, and we get so frustrated and so bitter that we say, I don't want anything to do with the church. I'll just do it on my own. So I want organic faith. I don't want organized faith anymore. I'm not about the institutions. I'm not about the religious gatherings. I'm just going to do and practice my faith on my own. Right? And in this way, it can be dangerous too. This is a mentality where you are connected with a God, but you don't want to connect with God's people. That's like marrying someone without ever wanting them to meet your family. See, Lone Rangers have a very highly individualistic understanding of salvation. And salvation is a personal decision. But you're really saved from sin, but you're saved into a family. That's where you grow and you learn. And it's part of your core identity. You're a member of Christ's body. Right? Jesus said when you're saved into my body, my family. That's where I want you to practice love and practice forgiveness. And I want you to, others to help reach the city. I need others around you to do that. This is something that Lone Rangers miss. So they have the gospel, they love Jesus, they love their city, but they just don't want anything to do with the church. Now, fourthly, and here's where I want to land, is we don't want to be a church in the city or against the city. We don't want to be Lone Rangers. We don't want to be a church that has given up their Christian identity and their distinctiveness and be a church of the city. You want to be a church for the city. For the city. Look at verse 19 onwards. It says, for them I sanctify myself, and they too may be truly sanctified. My prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one. Now Jesus says, look, I want to see people who are radically changed by the gospel and then compelled by the gospel to love others and to love their neighbors in their city. So we don't reject the city. We don't want to resemble the city. What we want to do is redeem the city. Redeem the city. The city does inform the church. So you don't want to cut that off and say, we're just going to do what we need to do. The city informs the church, but the church redeems, transforms, restores the city. That's what we want to see. That's a vision of RH3C. We're saying we want to build up people for the whole person, in other words, but also for the city, for the whole world. The world is coming to the city, but we want to be healthy and good and whole and be growing, that's how we're going to do it. You know, healthy mission flows out of a healthy church. So church, before I talk about what I want to talk about next, I want to pause for a sec and let you think about that. Because 2021 is a critical year for our church. Now, maybe some say it's not really that critical, is it? We're not, you know, likely to meet for at least half of it. We don't know what's happening in this situation. But it's really a reset button for the church. It's a pause for the church to get back on track, to really think about why we're church together. Because when we reunite and you're able to do in-person ministry, in-person mission, in-person worship, and that type of energy will galvanize the church. It's going to be exciting for the church in that time. But what are you galvanizing toward? What are you doing? What we want to do is we want to take 2021 to renew our relationship with God, our relationship with other people, and then restore the mission God has called us to. And this is really important. We want to get ready for the spiritual waves God is about to send our way. He's already sending. Now, spiritual waves are interesting. They are not created by us, but what we do is we recognize them with God's help, with prayer, with communal discernment. We recognize them, and then we ride on them. And we say, God, I want to be part of what you're doing. And this is really important that we understand. We don't create them. I don't say, I'm just going to do what I want to do. We say, God, you're doing something in this city. I want to be part of that. Our church needs to be part of that. So today I want to give you 3 spiritual ways that we need to prepare for. The first is the digital world is here to stay. And every time a new communication form is invented, the church actually grows. The gospel exponentially grows and spreads. When papyrus was invented, that's paper, the Bible was written. People could write down the stories of the Bible, what they saw. When the printing press was invented, the Reformation began. The Bible was put into the hands of regular folk who could understand the Bible in the vernacular, in the common language of the culture. No longer, were priests and pastors just reading it to people. People could have a Bible in their homes. God's word spreads. When television and radio was invented, evangelism exploded around the planet because now you could bring the gospel into every television in every home. And now we have the internet. No, we were dabbling in the internet realm for a little bit as a church. We did a little bit of live streaming. Now, look at all of us now. We're all online. We're on Zoom calls. I was talking to a young person who said her grandmother loves Zoom calls now, and they're big into Zoom calls because they never really understood how it worked before, but now she loves it. She's able to connect with friends and family all across the world. We're all into the digital realm now. So I think the question we got to ask as a church is what opportunities lie before us to share the hope of Christ in this digital realm. Now we're going to take a blended approach as we go back to a new reality post-COVID. In other words, we're going to reach the city, but we also want to reach beyond the city. We want to reach the people we can physically reach in the city that can come to worship service, that we can, go into each other's homes, but we also want to reach beyond the city. This is when we have digital content and digital interaction. What opportunities lie before us? Now, I can't answer that in this sermon, but it's something for all of us to think about. The digital world is here, and how do we engage in that? How do we reach more people for the sake of Christ with our unique digital content, digital interaction? That's something we got to think about. That's a wave we got to ride. The second wave we got to ride is the next generation is yearning. The next generation is yearning. Before COVID, I was visiting a Cantonese group, and it was because my son was at Basic Fellowship, the junior high fellowship. Shout out to all the basic counselors and coaches. I love you guys. Thank you for what you do. I was waiting for him, and I walked into a Cantonese fellowship, and I was just observing, and I was talking to them. And it was a younger fellowship. And as I'm talking to one of the young gentlemen, he's talking to me about his ideas, about what this ministry is about. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what I realize is this is a new generation that I see before me. This is a new generation. I'm reaching my generation. We're going to reach generations above us. But there's a new generation emerging. Now, we call that Generation Z. A lot of people term it Generation Z. But let me explain a few features of this generation. Number one, it's a pre-Christian generation. It's not really post-Christian. Post-Christian means that they understand generally who Jesus is, what the church is all about, even if they reject it. A pre-Christian generation has no idea about the historical Judeo-Christian culture. It has no idea who Jesus is, doesn't know what a church is, doesn't even know those words, doesn't have any Christianese words in their vocabulary. That's number one. Number two, they are a true generation. They're searching for what is true. The good news is they're very open to spiritual truth. They have a great openness to it. Now, and the other good news is they will rally behind what is true. And you see that in the stories of the world and the stories of the young people today. Whatever they find is true and valuable, they will put their full effort behind. Number three, they're an architectural generation. What I mean by that is they have the ability to impact the next century, if not beyond. They are globally connected. They're potent influencers for the next few decades. James Emery Wright wrote a book, and he said they are the most influential religious force in the West and at the heart of the missional challenge facing today's church. This is Generation Z. We got to reach them. And how we're going to reach them, I've been thinking about this for a little bit of time and talking to some of our pastors. One thing we want to do is we need to start training parents to be the primary spiritual influencers in their homes. And I want to add that it's not just parents, but it's grandparents, it's guardians, but people that interact with the children the most. When I was growing up, parents would, come to church and drop off their kids in their Sunday school. And now part of that's immigrant culture. They felt that people speaking English, reaching kids in English would be better for spiritual guidance. And that's true. And we all do that. But really, the baton is passed now back to the parents to be the spiritual primary influencers. We're going to talk about that in a sermon series in November and talk about this concept a little bit more and hopefully build into the culture and help parents. But the second thing is this. We want to develop a culture of spiritual investors, mentors, and influencers, because we realize also that parents are the spiritual influencers, but on their own is a difficult task for them to do. This church needs to be there as a significant source of spiritual support and guidance. This is what our Wild Deep program is all about. We want to keep evolving this program and this ministry so that it does help build spiritual discerning kids, spiritually mature kids with partnership with parents. And the third thing I've been talking about and I've been thinking about is we got to empower young people to have a stake and ownership of this church. And what I've realized is what we don't want to do is give people a church where it's something they either possess or reject. So, either take it or leave it. We want to help them realize they are the church. They're not just a subsection of the church. They are the church. And I say that humbly. I say that with sincerity of heart. But this next generation is going to do some incredible things. And that's not to say my generation and above is not. But the next generation is going to do incredible things. And I would say and challenge the church to rethink our definition of success. Because typically we think success is in one generation alone. Here's my generation. If I can do a good job of it, I'm successful. But, someone once told me success is measured in 3 generations. So not even the generation under you. It's the generation under them. If you can see spiritual growth and a growth in the church in that generation, you are successful. Number 3, the city is growing. The city is growing. I want to spend a little bit more time here because we just talked about the city. There are a few facts that we got to know. Number 1, the world is here. The world is here. People are coming to Toronto. Immigration has always been high in Canada, but people come to Toronto. They flock to Toronto because it's a great place to raise kids. It's a great place to exercise their faith, and their religion. It's a great place for people to clump together and cluster together. It's just a great city. But it's also a multicultural city, and it's the most multicultural city in the world, and most cities cannot boast what Toronto has. That means the church needs to be ready to reach multicultural landscapes. Now, we started as immigrant church reaching one culture, but now God is calling us to be multi-generation, multicultural church that reaches this diverse landscape. The second thing, what I realize is the city is growing. It's growing exponentially. People are coming here. More and more people are added to the city through birth and through immigration. So what the church needs is more coverage to reach a city, more coverage. Diversity and density. When they increase, the city becomes greater and bigger, and we need to have more coverage to reach that city. Now, here's the challenge. The challenge is that we only have one church building, okay, one physical building. And number 2 is that we are only awake 112 hours a week. And we expect people to come to a worship service that's only 1 hour, or maybe 2 hours if you include a Christian education Sunday school. But really, 2 hours of the time, that's like 1.3 to 1.5% of their waking hours. that presents a challenge. In other words, what we need is new ways to reach the city. I want to give you 3 new ways that I've been thinking about, what the leadership's been wrestling with. The first is that we got to extend our coverage. The worst thing you can do is, the worst feeling in the world is when you go out there and you're driving out there and you lose cell phone reception. There's no coverage. And it's a frustrating experience, but it does happen. What we need to do is blanket the city with more coverage. And what I mean by that is we got to shift our mindset a little bit. We got to shift our mindset. Here's the wrong mindset. The wrong mindset is coming to Christ or growing in Christ means coming to a church physically, a church building, a big church building. A better mindset is wherever you are, that's where the church should be. See, we've been talking about church at home for a bit. That's a concept we hope to make a true reality in 2021. So we want to strengthen our church at home groups. But the church at home is not really, a meeting in a backyard or a front porch. The essence is that you are the church. When 2 to 3 to 4 and above are gathered in a smaller setting, you are the church, and you are doing incarnational ministry. Incarnational ministry means that Jesus lived among us. He came down in human form to live among us, lived among people in human history. He got into the lives of people, and he shared their life and their space, and eventually he shared his message with other people, and that's what we want to be as a church. Because the church at home, the power in it is that it can really be anywhere. You could be a church on your street. You could be a church in the neighborhood, in the community, a church at everywhere. And I want to say, this winter is approaching. It's going to be a tough winter for all of us. I'll have more to share in a few sermons about that, how to prepare for that. But it's critical that you do join a church at home group, that you're part of a small group, because you want to take care of each other. You want to spur each other on. You want to work together to serve. And the way to do it is in smaller clusters, especially what's happening with COVID. We cannot meet as a bigger church family. The second thing we want to do is equip our people. Our church building has to be seen more and more as a multiplication base, a gathering point. Now, we are gathering for things, but what we want to see is we gather first and then we scatter. And we want to train people up. It's sort of like our church got to be seen as a gym. In a gym, you go, you build up your spiritual muscles, and you go and do something with those spiritual muscles. And that's what we want to do. We want to build up what we call the ministry base next year. So we want to strengthen our small groups, our church at homes, but we also want to build up our ministry base. We're going to start digitally, but eventually we're going to go back to the church building. And when we're in the church building, we've got to see it as a ministry base, as a base of operations, so to speak. And what we want to do is 4 things in this ministry base. We want to, number 1, help people discover their talents and their gifts and their ministry. Equip them to do that ministry better. Equip them with the right heartbeat, the right servant's mindset. We, number 3, want to mobilize people towards being a minister, everybody to be a minister, not just a select few. Number 4, we're going to celebrate what God's doing in our ministries. Discover, equip, mobilize, celebrate. I want to spend a few minutes on this. We want to expand the network. We want to partner with other churches to reach more of the city. We need a spiritual, reconciled, united leadership to reach the city. And I was talking to a pastor the other day about this, and we both agreed we need to come together to strategize how we can reach the city together. Not one church can do it alone. Not one organization can do it alone. In fact, we need to partner with the government. We need to partner with different departments in the city so we can bless the city as a whole. Now, the church does the evangelization, but the government and the networks that it has, we can work together with them to bless the city, bless the food bank, bless the shelters, bless the restaurants in the city. We got to do things like that. Think in that vein. Now, in conclusion, let me just say this. We are one church, one congregation, not 4, not 3, one congregation working together with the same vision and mission. That's what we're aiming towards, moving in the same direction. And the way you can apply this in your life is this. Remember this. Every member of this church needs to be on mission, needs to be moving in that same direction, growing, developing, training, and going out there to reach the city and working towards the good of the city. Jesus said in Matthew 16, he said, I'm going to build my church. Jesus is the leader. He's the developer. He is the architect of the church. And he says, I'm going to give you the keys to the kingdom. And what's going to happen is that you're going to release on earth what is released in heaven. And that's so interesting. He says to Peter, he says, look, one of the first disciples, he says, I'm going to build my church, Peter. And what I want you to do is you're going to be part of that. You're part of building my church and building my kingdom. And I mean, that's a huge calling for all of us. I really pray that, Jesus is saying to all of us, even though I'm the builder of the church, you're part of it. You're part of it, not just the leadership, not just the leaders, but you are part of it. You're a member of this church. You're part of this kingdom building. This is a vision that God has given us to bring us home, to make us new, and to help others do the same.